Today's Mass readings and Gospel reflection. November 24, 2020. Memorial of Saint Andrew Dung-Lac, Priest, and Companions, Martyrs. Tuesday of the 34th week in Ordinary Time. There are 117 martyrs in this group, and although they died at different times, they were all canonized by Pope John Paul II on June 19, 1988. Of the group, 96 were Vietnamese, 11 were Spaniards, and 10 were French. There were 8 bishops, 50 priests and 59 lay Catholics in the group. Of the priests, 11 were Dominicans, 10 belonged to the Paris Mission Society, and the rest were diocesan priests plus 1 seminarian. Certain individual martyrs were mentioned by name in the process of canonization: Andrew Dung-Lac, a diocesan priest; Thomas Tran Van Thien, a seminarian; Emmanuel Le Van Pung, father of a family; the Dominican bishops Jerome Hermosilla and Valentine Barrio Ochoa; and John Theophane Venard. Saint Andrew Dung-Lac's name was originally Dung and Tran, and he was born about 1795 into a poor and pagan family in Bac Ninh, North Vietnam. When he was 12, the family had to move to Hanoi, where his parents could find work. There he met a catechist and got food and shelter from him. He also got education in the Christian faith for 3 years, and was baptized in Vinh Tri with the Christian name Andrew Dung. After learning Chinese and Latin, he became a catechist, and thereafter taught catechism in the country. He was chosen to study theology, and on March 15, 1823 he was ordained a priest. As parish priest in Quidam, he was tireless in his preaching. He often fasted and lived a simple and moral life. He was a good example for the people, and many were baptized. In 1835 he was in prison under Emperor Minh Ang's persecutions, but his freedom was purchased by donations from members of the congregation he served. To avoid persecutions, he changed his name to Andrew Lac and moved to another prefecture to continue his work. But on November 10, 1839 he was again arrested, this time with Peter Thi, another Vietnamese priest whom he was visiting so that he might go to confession. Once again Andrew was liberated, along with Peter Thi, in exchange for money. Their freedom was brief. They were soon rearrested and taken to Hanoi, where both suffered dreadful torture. Finally, they both were beheaded December 21, 1839. First reading. A reading from the Revelations to John. Revelations chapter 14 verse 14 to 19. I, John, looked, and there was a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud one who looked like a son of man, with a gold crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Another angel came out of the temple, crying out in a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, "Use your sickle and reap the harvest, for the time to reap has come, because the earth's harvest is fully ripe." So the one who was sitting on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Then another angel came out of the temple in heaven who also had a sharp sickle. Then another angel came from the altar, who was in charge of the fire, and cried out in a loud voice to the one who had the sharp sickle, "Use your sharp sickle and cut the clusters from the earth's vines, for its grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and cut the earth's vintage. He threw it into the great winepress of God's fury. The word of the Lord. Responsorial Psalm. Psalms chapter 96 verse 10 to 13. Let our response be, "The Lord comes to judge the earth." Say among the nations, "The Lord is king. He has made the world firm, not to be moved. He governs the peoples with equity. The Lord comes to judge the earth." Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the sea and what fills it resound. Let the plains be joyful and all that is in them. Then shall all the trees of the forest exult. The Lord comes to judge the earth. Before the Lord, for he comes. For he comes to rule the earth. He shall rule the world with justice and the peoples with his constancy. The Lord comes to judge the earth. Gospel reading. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Luke chapter 21 verse 5 to 11. While some people were speaking about how the temple was adorned with costly stones and votive offerings, Jesus said, "All that you see here, the days will come when there will not be left a stone upon another stone that will not be thrown down." Then they asked him, "Teacher, when will this happen? And what sign will there be when all these things are about to happen?" He answered, "See that you not be deceived. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time has come. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified. For such things must happen first, but it will not immediately be the end." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be powerful earthquakes, famines, and plagues from place to place. And awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky." The Gospel of the Lord. Before we proceed with the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Also, please hit the notification bell, so you won't miss out when we release new videos. Feel free to share your comments, suggestions, and reflections at the comments section down below. Thank you and God bless. Now, let's proceed with the video. The reflection on today's Gospel. The Gospel today begins with the discourse of Jesus called the Apocalyptic Discourse. It is a long discourse which will be the theme of the Gospels in the next days up to the last week of the liturgical year. For us of the 21st century, the apocalyptic language is strange and confusing. But, for the poor and persecuted people of the Christian communities of that time, these were the words that everybody understood, and the principal purpose was to animate the faith and hope of the poor and oppressed. The apocalyptic language is the fruit of the witness of faith by these poor people, who in spite of the persecution, and against all contrary appearances, continued to believe that God was with them and that he continued to be the Lord of history. In the days leading up to the apocalyptic discourse, Jesus had broken away from the temple, the priests and the elders, the Sadducees, and from the scribes who exploited the widow. Finally, as we read in yesterday's Gospel, he ends by praising the widow who gave as alms all she possessed. Now, in today's Gospel, while some were talking about the temple, remarking how it was adorned with fine stonework and votive offerings, Jesus said the time will come when not a single stone will be left on another, everything will be destroyed. In listening to this comment of Jesus, the disciples asked, "Master, when will this happen, then? And what sign will there be that it is about to take place?" They ask for more information. The apocalyptic discourse which follows is the response of Jesus to this question from the disciples on when and how the destruction of the temple will take place. The Gospel of Mark tells us the following about the context of this discourse which Jesus pronounces. He says that Jesus had left the city and was now sitting on the Mount of Olives. There, from the top of the mountain he had a majestic view of the temple. Mark also says that there were only 4 disciples who listened to his last discourse. At the beginning of his preaching, 3 years before in Galilee, the crowds followed Jesus to listen to his words. Now, in the last discourse, there are only 4 who listen: Peter, James, John and Andrew. Objective of the discourse: take care not to be deceived. The disciples had asked, "Master, when will this happen? Then, and what sign will there be that it is about to take place?" Jesus begins his response with a warning. Take care not to be deceived. Many will come using my name and saying, I am the one and the time is near at hand. Refuse to join them. At a time of change and confusion there are always people who want to take advantage of the situation and deceive others. This happens today, and it happened in the time of the year 80. At the time when Luke wrote his Gospel, many thought that the end of time was close at hand with the disasters and wars of those years, and the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 and the persecution of Christians by the Roman Empire. There were people who said, God no longer controls the events. We are lost. This is why the main concern of the apocalyptic discourses is always the same: to help the communities to better discern the signs of the times. They should not be deceived by the conversations of people concerning the end of the world. Take care not to be deceived. The discourse offers signs to help them discern and increases their hope. Signs to help them read the facts. After this brief introduction, the discourse begins. When you hear of wars and revolutions, do not be terrified, for this is something that must happen first, but the end will not come at once. Then he said to them, nation will fight against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes and plagues and famines in various places. There will be terrifying events and great signs from heaven. To understand these words, one has to understand that Jesus lives and speaks in the year 33. The readers of Luke live and listen in the year 85. Now, in the 50 years between the year 33 and the year 85, the majority of things mentioned by Jesus had already taken place and were known to everyone. For example, in diverse parts of the world there were wars. False prophets arose, there were sicknesses and plagues. And in Asia Minor, the earthquakes were frequent. According to the apocalyptic style, this discourse lists all these events, one after the other, as signs or stages of the project of God in the history of the people of God, from the time of Jesus down to our time. First sign, the false messiahs. Second sign, war and revolutions. Third sign, nations which fight against other nations. One kingdom against another kingdom. Fourth sign, earthquakes in different parts. Fifth sign, hunger, plagues and signs in the sky. Here ends the Gospel for today. That of tomorrow presents another sign: the persecution of the Christian communities. Thus, by means of these signs within the apocalyptic discourse, the communities of the 80s, the time when Luke wrote his Gospel, could see God's plan and discover that history had not escaped the hands of God. Everything happened according to what was foretold and announced by Jesus in the apocalyptic discourse. What sentiment or feeling did you experience during the reading of today's Gospel? Peace or fear? Do you think that the end of the world is close at hand? What can we answer to those who say that the end of the world is close at hand? How can we encourage people today to resist and to have hope? Let the countryside exult, and all that is in it, and all the trees of the forest cry out for joy at Yahweh's approach, for he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with saving justice, and the nations with constancy.